Today, we're going to be talking about the Princess of Wales, and it's going to be a little bit different of a video than my previous videos where we focused on the current situation of the recent cancer diagnosis, and people have been speculating as to how severe this issue is with Catherine, Princess of Wales, and also they've been thinking about what's going on with her because people haven't seen her largely since Christmas, besides the video that came out. Today, we're going to be more interested in life purpose and soul lessons. So, for those of you that are fans of the Princess of Wales, this is going to be a very informative video for you. We're going to be looking at something called the Atmakaraka within the chart. And I'm going to be explaining all of this in very simple terms so that it's very easily understandable to anyone who's new to Vedic astrology. So, that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, for those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my videos and updates. By the way, like I said, I practice sidereal Vedic astrology. So the zodiac might be different from what you're used to if you're used to Western tropical astrology, which most people are used to. You want to make sure you go into the appropriate calculator online. By the way, I'm almost at 5,000 subscribers, so I want to say thank you, all of you, for the recent success that definitely this channel has enjoyed. If you're interested in a private reading, check for details down below. I do have a special discount for the month of June, so make sure you check that out. By the way, this video is going to be for entertainment purposes only. All the statements about Catherine, Princess of Wales, they're all allegedlys, and we're just speculating as to the astrological energies that are involved. So today we're focused on something called the Atmakaraka. Now, Atma means soul in Sanskrit, and then Karaka means it's the meaning of a planet, essentially. So the planet represents your soul. So it gives us some information about some of the experiences your soul may have signed up for in this current lifetime. And it's going to give us an indication of some of your a soul purpose. So there's a lot of indications there. Now, this isn't to be taken as just the singular life purpose of somebody. There's many different areas of the chart we can look at as far as somebody's purpose. And there's also a lot of free will and there's a lot of latitude in the chart as well. But this does give us some important indications. Usually when you look at an astrology chart, you'll notice that things actually kind of mesh together. You'll see indications that kind of come and they bring a certain confluence, and we really are able to determine a life purpose. Now, what we're going to be looking at in the astrology chart, and let me put that up for everybody, and let me change the slide here. When we're determining the Atmakaraka, or the planet that represents the soul and life lessons and things like that, what we do is we don't look at Ketu or Rahu. So you want to, not look at those when you're looking at your astrology chart. You're going to look for the planet out of these 7 planets that are left. Which one has the highest degree in the astrology chart? In Catherine, Princess of Wales, that's going to be planet Saturn over here. So there's a lot of different indications that we can get with this placement. So for example, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at, okay, what does planet Saturn itself represent? Then we're going to look at what does planet Saturn being with Mars represent? Because that gives a meaning as well. What does it mean when it's in the sign of Virgo? And then what does it mean when it's in the 3rd house? The other thing we're going to look at is there's a supplemental chart in Vedic astrology. And let me go ahead and clean that up. Let's see if we can drag over here. There's a supplemental chart called the Navamsa chart, which it gives us a lot of the spiritual purpose of somebody's life. And you'll notice that Saturn's over here. So there's a lot of different meanings within the chart that can help us understand the soul lessons and some of the purpose that Princess of Wales will have in this current lifetime. So let me go ahead and bring up one of the slides here. So when we look at the Atmakaraka, it's really going to help us determine life purpose. It's going to give us a certain focus and direction in life. So for example, with Saturn, we know that there are going to be a lot of trials and hardship within this lifetime. Saturn is usually the planet that really represents trying to establish wisdom in the current lifetime. Also, it's going to represent karmic challenges and lessons. What's interesting about Saturn being Atmakaraka is Saturn already represents a lot of the karmic challenges in somebody's life. And so when it's Atmakaraka, it's almost like multiplying that factor of how important Saturn is within the lifetime. Also, Saturn is going to show the soul desires. So ultimately, when we're looking at this, Saturn is going to represent uh, there's a purpose for those things. So if Saturn's putting us through hardship, there's a purpose. Just like if we think about a rock being put under tremendous heat and pressure and being turned into a diamond. So there is a spiritual purpose to even the more difficult situations that we face in our lives. Let me bring up the slide one more time for everybody. Like I said, you're going to want to look for the planet with the highest degree, except for Rahu and Ketu. And then again, you're going to want to look at what sign, what house it's in. Are there any planets with it? Are there any aspects happening to it? And that's going to give us some nuance about, how this is going to be playing out within the lifetime here. So let's move on to the next slide here. Now, let's talk about what it means when we have Atmakaraka Saturn in the chart. So, of course, this is Saturn right here. These are all, you'll notice that I use symbols, and that's the Saturn symbol there. So, what does Saturn represent itself? So, that's the first thing we really want to look at within the astrology chart. So, Saturn is going to represent discipline, responsibility, hard work, perseverance. It usually puts us through a lot of trials. There is in this lifetime, Saturn is wanting to provide this experience of hard work. Now, I know that's a little bit, maybe people will think, well, she's a royal, maybe she doesn't, how does she know about hard work? But keep in mind that when we're looking at an astrology chart, this is from the native's point of view. So maybe her time is quite consumed with a lot of activities and it's considered hard work. Maybe she doesn't have a lot of time to sit down and read a book. I mean, with Moon in the 12th house in her chart, shows she's very private. She might like to be in a library or doing something, reading a book or listening to music or going out in the nature. Those are all kind of 12th house things. But she's, basically always involved with something with duty, royal duties and things like that. Enduring hardship is also going to be a significant theme in the current lifetime. And obviously the recent cancer diagnosis is unfortunately one of those circumstances of hardship that she's enduring. The other hardship, if we look at the astrology chart, and I can't remember if I already pointed this out because I did talk about it, but remember, Moon is in the 12th house, which shows a very private person. So some of the hardship could be related to just having to do the royal duties in general. Maybe it's not, and we're speculating on this. Maybe it's not her first choice. There would be other things that she would rather be doing. But responsibility is going to be a big thing in this life. So, for example, she's a member of the royal family. She's married to Prince William, who's going to become king one day. Then she's got children, just the responsibilities of being a mother. So she's wearing many different hats within this lifetime. A lot of hats that people, normally wouldn't wear. Now we're going to talk about the Saturn. The first thing we're going to discuss, we talked about what Saturn represents: hard work, perseverance. Usually during the lifetime, there's going to be periods of isolation and solitude. I can imagine right now she's going through this hardship of the cancer diagnosis and the treatment. She's probably feeling like, even though there's a lot of people around her, she's probably feeling, a sense of solitude, in that maybe not people don't fully understand what she's going through right now. So there could be the feeling of isolation with that, of course. Now let me show you in the chart. So the first thing we're talking about is Saturn and Mars together. This really provides a unique yoga. Okay, so a lot of people that have this yoga, they have tremendous endurance, because none of these planets, Saturn or Mars, want to lose this planetary war. So there can be a lot of tension and anxiety in the lifetime. But let's talk about, what does it mean in specifically when Mars and Saturn are together, and then Saturn's your Atmakaraka, or represents the soul purpose in your lifetime. So a lot of the lessons in this lifetime are going to be considered conflict and resolution, because Mars and Saturn are antagonistic towards each other. Mars is basically the gas pedal and Saturn is the brake. So just like it says in the slide, Mars wants quick action, whereas Saturn flavors or favors slow, steady progress. So this is going to be some of the issues she's facing in her life, and it can manifest in all different areas of her life. Control and aggression, there's that balance too. A lot of times, people that have Saturn and Mars together, sometimes one of the issues they can deal with is holding on to anger and resentment and things like that from the past. It's like Saturn wants to suppress that anger. So sometimes it's like when we have to keep that sense of a straight face or decorum, and we feel angry, but we still have to be restrained. There's tension there. Saturn and Mars are going to create stress and frustration through the life. So there's definitely, it's not easy with this type of placement. Also, this is our first indication of some health issues there. Now, Saturn represents the bones in a general way, and then Mars represents muscles and blood. I don't know if that relates to the current situation, but I did in my studies find out that Saturn and Mars together can indicate, because of all this the tension and stress that's on the body, it can represent a certain amount of it can create dense energies on the body. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide here. Remember, when we look at the astrology chart, we also are looking at Atmakarakas in the third house. So the third house typically represents like siblings. That's usually the first indication, but it also represents things like entrepreneurship, small business, communications. It represents how we think on a daily level, like our habitual thinking that we have. So when Saturn's there, it can be a real struggle to stay optimistic. And that's definitely going to be one of the problems, or one of the challenges in this current lifetime, is just maintaining optimism despite all these obstacles that are surfacing because of the Saturn karma. And like in the slide, the third house, like I said, it represents siblings, short journeys, personal effort. And then Saturn represents discipline, responsibility, karmic lessons. By the way, I didn't bring that up. Saturn just represents karmic lessons in general. Usually these karmic lessons, they come from past lives. So there's a balancing of the scales, so to speak. So when we sign up for a really hard life, when somebody has Atmakaraka like Saturn, usually the lifetime is being spent on some level repaying some karma from past lifetimes, because the karma does have to be exhausted in some way. We basically, all of us have this. All of us have this slate of karma we got to go through. Now the lessons, let's talk about the lessons of this, because it's one thing to have Saturn in the third house and be afflicted with things like negative thinking, difficulty with siblings, um, and having difficulty with communications. But what are the lessons? Okay, so lesson number one, there's this idea of developing strength and resilience, learning how to face challenges head on with determination and perseverance. The third house represents things like courage and moving forward in life. So there's this idea of really learning to move forward. Mastering effective communication is going to be something with Saturn in the third house, Atmakaraka. Um, she may have had difficulties, and it could be, sometimes when people have Moon in the 12th house, they could be a little bit shy or reserved. So there could have been some difficulty learning to express herself, and that's going to be one of the lessons in this lifetime. And third house also has to do with self-confidence. It reminds me a lot of the solar plexus chakra, if you've studied yoga, self-confidence. So there's this idea of developing self-confidence within the current lifetime. I'm sure when she started, when she married Prince William, I'm sure that she was probably more shy, and she got used to the royal duties and dealing with the public. She probably has gotten better as time has went on, because Saturn represents, in the third house, it represents like this slow learning process that you're going through. Let's talk about Saturn in the sign of Virgo. So we looked at Saturn and Mars together. We looked at Saturn in the third house, but now we got to talk about the sign. Usually when we talk about signs in Vedic astrology, usually it has like a psychological effect. Usually that's what it represents. So Virgo would represent things like perfection and criticism, and there could be some issues with that in the current lifetime. And let's go ahead and talk about that in the chart here. So lesson number one, in the sign of Virgo, there could be a lesson of developing some meticulousness, because Virgo represents somebody that's very detail oriented. There's a strong emphasis on paying attention to the finer details. There's also the idea of embracing a sense of duty. Virgo is the natural sixth house in the natural zodiac. Like if we make Aries the ascendant, so the sixth house could be really embracing a spirit of service. But one of the things I want to bring up is Virgo also represents disease and health challenges in the lifetime too, because it's the natural sixth house. Just like we said, third lesson is prioritizing health and wellness. You notice that the karma that is expressing itself right now, sometimes life will like force us to slow down, unfortunately, and sometimes those are when our greatest soul lessons surface, is when we're forced into some sort of recovery or healing situation. And that appears to be what Saturn's doing right now, as of the making of this particular video. So managing perfectionism and self-criticism. Usually there's karma of criticism with Saturn in the sign of Virgo. So for example, she might have faced a lot of criticism from people. There might be a lot of people that are judgmental. Like, for example, and I'm just making an assumption here, maybe when she married Prince William, there may have been people at the time that didn't think she was good enough, or didn't think she was perfect enough, or didn't think, so at least from this point of view of the astrology chart, there's a sense of being criticized or having to be perfect. And that can be exhausting on people when people are expected to be perfect. But also, I do want to point out when Saturn's in the sign of Virgo, sometimes it can represent the native is also they developed a sense of being critical too, because as a defense mechanism, because they've received a lot of criticism, sometimes they can be really good at analyzing situations and people and events and picking out all the problems in that event. That's why people that have Saturn and Virgo, they can be good journalists or investigators, because they know how to get right down to the facts. And they could, if you got into an argument or a debate with somebody with Saturn and Virgo, good luck, because they're going to be able to pick out every imperfection within that. Also, because Virgo represents the sixth house, the lifetime is going to be navigating karmic relationships. We're going to have to say that she does have even her relationship with Prince William. It's a karmic relationship. It's not always going to be easy. There's going to be some challenges there. In another video where I talked about seventh from moon is the sixth house, there's definitely some challenge there. It's not perfect. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned through the marriage itself that's coming up besides these health challenges. So it's a lot to sign up for within the current lifetime. Now we're going to talk about something called the Navamsa chart. And this is exciting because I don't usually talk about Navamsa too much on my channel. And the reason why is because, I try to keep my videos to a level of, I usually try to keep them to 15 or 20 minutes. And if we do the Navamsa analysis, it usually will lengthen things. And so I think this is really awesome that we get to focus on the Navamsa. It's a supplemental chart we use in Vedic astrology. So let me show you that in the chart. So basically the Navamsa chart, or actually let me back up for a second and explain what the main chart is. So this is in Vedic astrology, this is known as the D1 chart. This is your main chart, and this is going to be the chart of physical manifestation. Okay. This is like the physical events that happen in your life. Now, there are some psychological things, but essentially, this is how the karma is being downloaded within the current lifetime. Now, when we look at the Navamsa chart, and I'm going to drag over here, which is this is more about spiritual purpose. So it's not necessarily has to do with physical manifestation of events. It's spiritual purpose. And also we can look at marriage relationships with the Navamsa chart. Basically, the Navamsa chart is the fruits of Dharma. So a lot of what we can learn about the soul comes from the Navamsa chart. So when we're looking at Atmakaraka, it's important to look at Atmakaraka's um, purpose within the Navamsa chart, not just the D1 chart, which represents the physical manifestations of lessons that are occurring in the current lifetime. So let me go ahead and pull up the Navamsa chart. I actually have, and let me go ahead. I think I was wanting a different view here. But let me go ahead, and I'm actually going to switch it to a larger slide. So this is, hang on a moment. And okay, so don't save this one. Okay, this is the Navamsa chart. So this is the D9. Okay. Now, for generating a Navamsa chart, by the way, you have to have a birth time that's accurate. You can't just use like a general time that's within just an hour of when you were born. You want to have it within a few minutes of when you were born, because the Navamsa chart does require a degree of precision when we're calculating it. Now let's go ahead and bring up the slide here. So, like I said, the Vedic in Vedic astrology, the Navamsa chart is going to be related to a person's spiritual journey, relationships, and their unfolding life path. It's their sense of dharma and the spiritual fruits that are really coming through the Navamsa chart. So, if we take a look at the Navamsa chart, Atmakaraka, remember it's Saturn. Okay, it's Saturn over here. You'll notice it's still in the sign of Virgo. Sometimes the planets can change signs. They can be in a different house and sign in the Navamsa chart. So it gives us a little bit different of a meaning of some of the spiritual purpose that's going on. But you'll notice it's in the same sign, but it's in the eighth house. So it's not the third house, it's the eighth house. So we're really focused on, we kind of talked about Virgo already. There's this idea of the soul is learning how to respond to criticism. It's learning about perfectionism. It's learning about attention to detail. A lot of those are going to represent some of the lessons on a soul level as well through the Navamsa. But let's talk about, and we're going to focus on the eighth house representation, because that's kind of a new thing to look at as far as the Navamsa chart goes. So let me go ahead and put up the slide here. So there's a few lessons to learn. Remember, the eighth house represents things like shocking change, transformation. It is the house of death and rebirth, the occult, astrology. All those things are the eighth house. The eighth house can represent things like shamanism. It's a very mysterious house. Typically, it in an average person's life, it's going to represent those shocking events that make us change our identity, essentially. Now, let's talk about what it means on a spiritual soul level, though, because remember, this isn't the physical chart. So, when we're talking about some of the challenges that are happening in the Princess of Wales' life, like the cancer diagnosis, it does have an eighth house element of its this shocking event that's bringing about this profound transformation within the native of the astrology chart. So, for example, one of the lessons is going to be embracing transformation and letting go of the old to make way for the new. The individual will face significant transformations that are crucial for spiritual growth. So even when we face things like, being hospitalized or things like that, it's usually this spiritual transformation that's happening. So even though the body can be having a lot of problems, there's a spiritual transformation that's taking place. One of the difficult lessons with Saturn as Atmakaraka in the eighth house of the Navamsa is going to be overcoming deep-seated fears and psychological issues. So this can bring hidden fears, and these are fears, by the way, from past lives. She might have a lot of deep fears within the subconscious. The eighth house represents the subconscious, and the second house represents conscious memory. So there's a lot of deep-rooted fears that are rising to the surface within this current life to confront. So sometimes through the D1 chart, they're being brought to manifestation. There's going to be issues with karmic debts and responsibilities within this lifetime, unresolved issues from past lives. And there's going to be a focus. Again, there is this idea of health with focusing on health and longevity. Um, eighth house represents health and longevity because it's the house of death and rebirth. When people look at things like life extension, and I know I just saw this there's like this millionaire or billionaire who's like doing all these things to try to extend their life. I don't know if any of you saw that. That's the eighth house. It's like dealing with life extension technologies. So eighth house is about how do you take care of your health to extend those kind of things. Now let me bring up the slide again here. And let's talk about the other aspect of Saturn in the eighth house of the Navamsa chart. I'm getting tongue tied there. The other aspect I want to bring up really quickly here is, remember, we have to look at planetary aspects. So not only are we looking at Saturn's in the eighth house of Virgo, but we're also have to look at, if you notice, the fourth aspect of Mars is affecting that house. Now, in the other chart, in the D1 chart, there weren't any planetary aspects. You'll notice that it was Mars and Saturn. They were together in the D1 chart. In this, it's interesting to note that in the Navamsa chart, Mars is still involved, even though they're in different houses. So the fourth aspect of Saturn is 100%. It's a full aspect. It's a full aspect on the planet Saturn. So again, there's going to be a lot of issues with conflict, things like that. Let me bring up the slide here. So when we're talking about the eighth house of transformation, there's this spiritual sense, because remember, the Navamsa can represent almost a spiritual, emotional, psychological kind of point of view. There's this sense of urgency about the life. Like you can feel very rushed about things. Like you want to rush this period of transformation. So even right now, there might be this internal rush to heal, this internal rush to try to get better. All those things are represented with Mars. So Mars is adding that fuel to it. Remember, Saturn's really slow. Saturn's all about glacial change. Mars is going to be good in that she's going to face these really traumatic events with courage, because Mars provides that courage. Mars can be the planet of like a firefighter, somebody that like charges into a building and saves, becomes a hero. There's a lot of courage associated with Mars. The combination of Mars and Saturn, again, there can be power struggles throughout the life. Just like we saw the combination in the D1 chart, while it's aspecting in the Navamsa chart, again, there's going to be power struggles in areas related to resources, inheritances, intimate relationships. The eighth house does represent in-laws. And what I want to point out is it can represent, when we're talking about in-laws, it doesn't necessarily mean she has problems with the royal family, but it can represent that there's a lot of pressure there. She wants to be perfect. Remember, Saturn's in the sign of Virgo. She wants to be perfect. She wants to do everything right. So there can feel like this incredible responsibility and perfectionism there. Mars is good for being able to deal with emergencies and taking swift action. So that's also good with this type of placement. So that's what we got with Atmakaraka in the astrology chart. And of course, all of you can look at your own astrology charts, and you want to look at, what is your Atmakaraka? You want to look at what is the planet? What's the nature of the planet? What house is it in? What sign it's in? Look at the aspects, just like we did. Look at where it is in the Navamsa, and it's going to give you a general framework of some of the life lessons and soul purpose that you have in the current lifetime. Now, Saturn, like I said, as Atmakaraka, it's going to represent that this lifetime is going to have a lot of endurance issues, hard work, karmic payback, a lot times of isolation. I think recently I saw that, for example, Prince William, as of the making this video, he went to Normandy, France. So, he's out and about. There might be a feeling of aloneness there. She's trying to recover, and then her spouse is going out and having to do some of these royal duties, show up to these various events and things like that. So let me know what you all think down below. There's of course other aspects to look at in as far as purpose in an astrology chart. So for example, we can look at the 10th lord and the 10th house, because that kind of gives us an idea of purpose. We can look at the ascendant. So in the Princess of Wales case, that would be the moon. We look at the placement of moon in the chart as well. So I want you to know there's a lot of different factors. This is a very dynamic type of, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle that we're putting together and trying to determine, okay, what are some of the karmas? What's some of the purpose? What are some of the lessons that are to be learned within this current lifetime? Anyways, let me know down below what you all think. Thank you for watching. And of course, let me know if you like this type of video, and I can produce more of these videos about the other royal family members and things like that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.